Soho House Bangkok. Welcome members, welcome committee, welcome soon to be members. So yeah, let me tell you what is Soho House Bangkok for who's never been to Soho House Bangkok before. Well, welcome to the house. Well, you're gonna be coming more soon here because you're a committee. So Soho House Bangkok is a place for creative people, creative community to network, mingle, make friends, party, and we expand family. And the event today, it happened because we have one frequent members coming in, brought a friend from New York who just casually said that he has a museum, very cool museum in New York. So I looked up the museum and turnout is very interesting indeed. So we just casually invited if he wants to do a talk with us because his museum is consisted of human bone and he is interested in osteology. So I'm sure you want to know more about him. Prepare your questions because he would love to answer all your questions. Not the easy one, any questions. So may you guys please welcome Jon Pichaya Ferry. Thank you, Jon. I'll give this to you.
Perfect. Ciao, everyone. Thank you so much for having me in today. I'm really excited to do this presentation, and if you can't see anything, actually I'm looking at the room, I'm going to stand over here so it might be a little bit easier to see. So excited to be here and really talking about an unconventional topic and a lesser known topic I think is the ethos of museums and educations in the world alike. So hopefully Thailand, I feel like bones isn't as known. So I would love to really talk about this unconventional topic and give you guys a chance to learn about an industry I think is truly amazing. And like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a section talking about just how I started the museum, a little bit more about the practice, and then if you have any questions at the end about how I scaled the business, Q&As, the bones, please feel free to ask me everything and anything. I would love to answer all of your questions. So, and thank you Soho House Bangkok for having me today.
Thank you.
So, skeletons in the closet. Can I get a show of hands right now? Did you know in America you could just buy a human skull? Anyone? There you go. If you live in the US, you can buy a human skull like you could a couch or saw a cheeseburger at the mall. It is that common, and people just don't know that, and that really summarizes why I do what I do and why I think this is such an issue in the world that really needs to be addressed. So a little bit about me. My name's Jon or Jon Pichaya Ferry. I'm the founder of the Bone Museum as well as JonsBones. We have the largest collection of human osteology on public display in the East Coast in the US. And my background is in forensic anthropology, and I have my BFA in industrial design from Parsons in New York City. So a little bit more context. I was born and raised in Thailand, and eventually when I moved to Parsons, I started my business in my college dorm room. My father gave me a mouse skeleton when I was 13 years old. And instead of presenting it to me as creepy, dark, and scary, he showed it to me from an academic and an educational standpoint. And my mom is a professor and has a background in design. So I've always had this interesting intersection between design as well as scientific inquiry. So you can see me right over here. This is me freshman year of college. And this was my college dorm stand. And you can see all of the bones there. So as you can imagine, my roommates loved me. But made it through that phase and eventually grew it to where it is today. My early career started in articulations. I was always interested in the skeletal system, but what we can learn from it from a design standpoint. So I believe that before you can walk, you have to crawl. Before you can run, you have to walk. So I wanted to better understand how the skeletal system worked and how bones can be incorporated in design, since I'm traditionally educated in industrial design, and that was my main pathway. So I did this for a couple years, and I would do articulations for museums and private collectors alike. This led me to my design degree. So traditionally, I was my school's IDSA Merit Award finalist, and every single piece that I design is centered around bones. Trabeculi being the inner structure of bones, how it could be used as a diffuser for light, How do we use bones as a physical materiality? So combining it with a composite material in order to make a long-lasting material that uses less biomatter. My thesis, which was an innovative solution around designing in metropolitan cities and improving space-hanging solutions, looking at the ribcage and the human spine, as well as many more projects. So it was from my appreciation for bones that eventually led to my design practice. And then things took a weird turn, but I don't regret it for 1 second. So that's probably the question that everyone in the room is wondering. Why real human bones? And it started one day when I was at an oddity shop in New York City. They had a real human skull on display in their on the shelf. And I said, wait, I work with animal skeletons. What is this human skull? And the owner said, oh, it's no biggie. And I said, okay, where did you get it from? And he said, oh, don't worry about it. It was donated to research. And I said, I can purchase it? I'm not a doctor. He says, yeah, if you're willing to pay. And so I said, okay. And I started collecting and working in human osteology. And it wasn't until 2 years into this, I realized, oh my gosh, there was a huge industry. It was a globalized trade. There were hundreds of thousands of skulls sourced for this trade within the globalized economy, and nobody knows about it. So then I spent the last 5 years of my life trying to raise awareness and really raise awareness about the medical bone trade and to destigmatize a stigmatized industry. So why does this industry exist? This was a skeleton that was used by a secret society. So it was purchased from a medical textbook or a medical catalog, but they hid this skeleton in the walls of an Oddfellows church. So this was a secret society that would buy real skeletons and use them for their hazing rituals. Fast forward 50 years later, the lodge got sold and a new owner purchased it. When they were doing renovations, they tore down the wall and they found this real skeleton plastered in between the walls. The contractors freaked out. They didn't want to touch it. They would not continue construction until the owner would deal with it. So after searching around online, she found us, and now we proudly have this skeleton in our Oddfellows exhibit at the museum. But imagine that if you were a doctor from 1920 to 1985, it was extremely common for you to have to buy your own skeleton in your time in the medical field. There was just an academic journal posted in the Nature magazine speculating that 2.4 million individuals donated their bodies to medical science to meet this growing demand. So speculatively, that was just in one region of the US. How many bones could be in people's attics and basements all over the world? And this is really what we're dealing with. This is an example of medical students. This is actually from where I finished high school, Fort Wayne, Indiana. I went to South Bend, Indiana. So this photo is almost 200 years old, showing medical students with real human bones. More medical students, they used to have fun with it. Can't really do that today, you're gonna get in trouble. But they used to like to pose with these skeletons and take photos. So I think humanizing it is really important. These weren't creepy, they weren't used for rituals, they weren't used for as much secret societies. That did happen, but it was all and mainly medical students. And this is one from the French Anatomy Institute, where you can just really see the scale of how many bones were produced in this industry. And that really, that's one big number that I got, is according to Scott Carnegie's The Red Market, in 1984, 60,000 skulls were shipped to the US and the UK alone in 1 year. So that's what I really want to emphasize to you, is how big of an industry this was and what do we do with it. So yeah, what do we do with the skulls? That really was my mission and what I ended up trying to solve. So that's what I do currently. I go all over the United States and I purchase these pieces back from the general public. This skull that you're seeing over here was from a dentist. It was given to her after a dentist retired, said, I don't want these anymore, take them. They went 2 years before realizing that they were real human skulls. They freaked out, they thought it was bad energy, and then they contacted me, so I drove 5 hours down to go pick these up, and I was working with Vice on a documentary about the bone trade, so they came and covered that experience. Same with this skeleton here. Oopsie doopsie, lost a slide. That was me working with the family and talking to them about where they acquired the bones from and kind of going through that process. But that's another thing I really wanted to emphasize is that these are regular people. These are regular Americans. Actually, just as I was sitting here preparing for this presentation, somebody emailed me and said, hey, my father just passed away. He was a physician. I was cleaning out his attic and I found a real human skull. I have no idea what to do with it. It's creeping me out. I don't know if it's legal or illegal. Can you guys help me? So I was working through that right as I was prepping for this. So that's kind of where JonsBones came in. JonsBones is the sale division of kind of this educational field around human osteology. But we would purchase the skulls back from the members of the general public, curate them, work with forensic anthropologists and osteologists, and sell them back to schools and universities. So typically, if you're going to work with a larger in-house donation program, it's incredibly expensive to work with real and modern bones. Since these pieces already exist, instead of them ending up in landfills, which we still see happen today, how can we get them back into the educational field? Let's get them out of the hands of addicts and people that aren't going to use them for the correct and proper reasons, and try to move them back into universities, educators, and working professionals. So currently, we have working relationships with some of the largest medical schools in the US, and they regularly purchase from us season through season. But unless you're Harvard Medical or the University of Tennessee, not every institution has an in-house body donation program. So I had someone come to the museum one time, a medical student, and by the end of the tour, she was crying. And I asked her, why are you crying? Are you okay? She said to me, I had gone through all 4 years of pre-med, and I have never seen a real human skull because my school didn't have the funding to have an anatomy program, like an in-house anatomy program. So that's really where it reaffirmed why we do what we do, trying to make osteology more accessible to everybody. I wanted to study osteology when I was in high school, but where I lived in the US didn't have the facilities and programs. So a lot of my early career came from the inaccessibility I had to wanting to study bones. Through there, we've done a lot of work through social media. We recently hit 250,000 followers on Instagram, as well as 650,000 followers on TikTok. But every day we post one educational video talking about craniotomies, plagiocephaly, anencephaly, different types of trephinations, but how can we really raise more awareness about this trade so more people can get into the medical field and really be inspired by what makes us, us. I also go around the country and I give keynote speeches on the specific history. So for this talk, it's more about kind of how I started the business and a little bit of a background. But if you're ever in New York and you want to learn more about the history itself, I do talks on that too. And I go all over the country and do research at different medical museums. So this is the Sililat Anatomical Museum in Bangkok, associated also with the Kong Dong Museum. But I think this slide is so important. At this point, I had been working with bones for 3 years, and one of my TikTokers commented, hey, if you love bones, have you seen the bone museum, like a bone museum in Thailand? And I go, I work with bones for a living. I collect these pieces. There's no museum in Thailand. I think it's illegal there. And I Googled it, and it's 20 minutes away from my house. And if I worked with these pieces for so long and I didn't know this existed, how is the average person supposed to be able to go in and learn more about what makes us, us? So here's me at Sililat. This is the Museum of Osteology in Oklahoma. I talked to the founder, Jay, and I did some research on their collection. This is the Natural History Museum in New York City. They have a real skeleton on display from Carolina Biological Supply, as well as an infant skeleton. And this is Sharon. Sharon actually worked at one of the bone companies when she was 18 years old. So we interview surviving members of individuals that would clean the skeletons. Where did you get the bones from? How were they sourced? How were they acquired? And we're trying to actively figure out this information. Currently, if you Google it, there's no Wikipedia page on the bone trade. There's no academic journals and writings about it publicly. It's this entire part of medical history that's been subsequently squandered and hidden away. A little bit of background. Medical companies would sell these to schools, and in around the 50s, India became the primary exporter of human remains. In 1985, they banned the export, and subsequently, all of the companies went bankrupt. So through there, all of these universities said, we didn't do that, oopsie, and hid it from their records. And all of these companies went under or pivoted to plastic casts. So there's no documentation and no surviving research about sourcing and acquisition. And that's what we actively do at the museum, is try to raise more awareness. Anything with human bones is incredibly sensitive. It's human remains, mortality, grief. We have such an emphasis on loss when it comes to dealing with death and skull imagery. So how do we take this incredibly sensitive topic and make it more engaging and accessible to the average person? Here at the museum, we try to stay neutral about the history and present it as is, and let people make their own informed decisions about the trade. But first, the information has to be there in order for them to be able to make their informed decisions. So that eventually led us to the Bone Museum. After 5 years of working with JonsBones and selling to schools and universities, we were able to amass a large enough collection. And for me, I wanted to put my mouth where my, walk the talk, essentially. It was so much more profitable to stay in the private sector and sell to schools and universities. I'm sure, there are a couple people here that work in the museum industry watching, always begging for money, and the $20 general admission usually does not cut it. But for me, it's always been about accessibility and really being able to teach people this history. So through there, we finally opened the museum, and this is a new venture we just opened October 30th of last year. So we're a relatively new space, but it's a really new and exciting territories. So this was me, my mom and my partner, and we just had our grand reopening through there because we did a bunch of renovations on the space. But it was extremely exciting. We had a large turnout, and people have been really passionate about learning about this history. Within the museum, we have over 150 real human skulls, the largest collection of phantom skulls in the US. These are skulls that have been encased in resin used by X-ray technologists, as well as skull development showing everything from a fetal skull all the way to late-stage geriatric. The history, so this one covers the history specifically. All the bone boxes, where they were sourced from, the people that used them, the companies, who were the people, is covered in this section. And traumas, pathologies. We recently just got a skeleton with gigantism. Gigantism, the individual was 7'3". Currently in the US and in the world, there's only 3 skeletons on exhibit with gigantism. The Hunterian Museum has one, the Iris Giant, but it was just removed from public display. The Mutter Museum, Sililat, and then the Bone Museum. So hopefully with this piece here, we can really attract more people to come see and learn more about osteology and some of the rare variations within it. This is our pathological exhibit and the Oddfellows exhibit, the secret society I mentioned earlier. And here we have different traumas, abnormalities, a skull with syphilis, a skull with leprosy, not fun, but interesting to see how it affects the human body. And since opening, it's been quite successful, and these are some of the publications that we've been in, and it's been highly impactful. So, days like this is really important for me because it really tries to further our mission of making osteology more accessible. So thank you so much for having me on, and that's my little pep talk.